Welcome to the Generational Gamer.
Welcome to the first of what we hope will be many Generational Gamer episodes.
How's everyone doing?
Well, I'm doing fine.
All right.
All right. You doing all right?
Good.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Fantastic.
So,
yeah.
all right.
All right.
So you can hear my kids in the background. My son is actually my cameraman right now. So he's gonna do a good job. Anyway, we got the idea after having a discussion about these two wonderful consoles right here.
Can't see him.
You can't see them. Oh, sorry. These two wonderful consoles, the NES.
And the most superior Sega Dreamcast.
Well, of course it's more superior. It came out 20 years later.
And plus the design was much better.
Again, 20 years later.
And the color was much smoother.
Yeah, well, this one has some sticker residue on it that I was never able to get off because I was about 10 and I put them on there. I had to have my Mega Man and all the other cool stickers I got from Nintendo Power. But I digress. That one I got in my 20s and it's in great shape because I got it when I was much older.
No residue, and plus on top of that, the original logo, not faded.
That's right. In fact, there were a couple different variations of that particular system. The first and foremost was the Sega Sports variation. It was black and it had Sega Sports emblazed right around here. I believe it still had this, but it was blue. The Dreamcast is interesting because it was the first one to include a modem. And you could swap it out and put an Ethernet card in there, which was just coming into its heyday back in the late '90s for personal use. I mean, it was around in business for years, and still around in business. Just instead of 100 megabits, it's a gigabit now, or 10 gigabits.
That said, ladies and gentlemen, what we want to talk about is which video game him and I thought was better than the other. Now, once again, I say the Dreamcast was better because I think it was more fun, more powerful. The library games were a little better for its time versus the retro Nintendo. But there are some people out there who may feel differently. How do you feel, Mr. Prawn?
Well, I look at it like this. Which one of these is revolutionary? You've got this one right here that is evolutionary at best. I mean, it was a great console, believe me.
Exactly.
I enjoyed this thing greatly. It was a great upgrade from the PlayStation. You want to say Saturn, even though this is the reason why this came out so quickly. It was the Saturn. It looked leaps and bounds better than the PlayStation, which I love. But let's be honest, the PlayStation games, particularly the 3D ones, were blocky as hell. And the N64 games, most of them, even though it was a great system, most of the games were really washed out. And unfortunately, the fact that it was the first 64-bit system, the first one that had the 3D worlds. Mario is a standout, of course. Mario is a standout, but if you walked into a corner, you'd always see the other side of it. You'd always see the other side of that world. So it was either a white screen or a blue screen or what have you. You'd always see that, and it was pretty prevalent, particularly in those old N64 games. By the time the Dreamcast came around, things were a bit more refined. But again, evolutionary. This thing right here was revolutionary, and the reason being is because it brought the video game market back from extinction. I mean, we've got Atari, we got a television, we had Coleco back in the late 70s, early 80s. In fact, my first gaming memories were with the Intellivision, the first Intellivision. Now this one, it did not have a detachable controller, but when the console died, my parents, I mean, I was a little kid, what was I going to say? They threw it away and they ripped the controller out for some reason. The Intellivision 2 was a modification of the Intellivision, and one of the modifications was that the controllers were detachable. 9 pins, just like the Genesis and Sega Master System, and Atari for that matter. I did plug one of these into a Genesis one, and it was amusing once, but it was amusing, but it didn't really work too well, and vice versa. The Genesis, this thing couldn't even play it. But, little tidbit, this is actually the first 16-bit console, not the Genesis. The graphics don't look it, but when you compare it to Atari 2600 or 5200, oh my god, it's awesome. This particular model, the Intellivision 2, they invented the lockout technology, which was modified even further in the original NES, but they ended up locking out some of their own games. So I had Word Fun, which was not fun, but it was with words. But they locked out Word Fun, so Mattel Electronics sent me the Kool-Aid Man, which is actually worth some money now, and I still have it in the box and the inlays, so that's something else. This thing used the inlays, so it would give you more controls. Now, it had 4 buttons, 2 on either side. My experience, usually only 2 worked for any game, either the top or bottom, not both. But it was a fun thing, but I always wanted a Nintendo, and my parents always said no. But this one will always have a special place in my heart because I was a small child, my grandfather had just passed, and I was devastated, and pretty much anything to make me even the slightest bit happy was an option. And my birthday was coming up, my parents and grandmother, who I was close with my grandfather, extremely close with him and my grandmother. They asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted a Nintendo, which I've been saying for like the last 2 years prior. And got this on, I think, either my 8th or 9th birthday. And it is definitely a fond memory for me. But this thing was revolutionary. It started off in Japan. They had their Famicom system. My wife had a Famicom when she was a young child. She lived in Asia. I'm not going to say where. But she lived in Asia, and she had a Famicom as a kid. She's got some family members there right now, and they're going to look for it. Otherwise, I may just have to break down and buy one. They're pretty cool. They've got the same kind of controllers, but they're hardwired, and it had the disk drive that sat underneath it. It looked nothing like this. So Nintendo wanted to bring their Famicom, which was already insanely popular in Japan, to the United States. Unfortunately, after the days of the Atari and the Intellivision, no store wanted to touch it. So they had to come up with gimmicks, which is something that they've actually evolved pretty significantly. If you look at the Wii, which I have right over here, and the Wii U with the tablet, which I never bought, but it was a nice evolution of the Wii. And now the Switch has the docking station. Now I love the SNES, which is also right behind me, because it just plays good games. And we wouldn't have the PlayStation without it. Story for another time, perhaps. Anyway, so Nintendo, who has been around since the 1800s, went from being a trading card company to a toy maker. They even had love hotels. Could you imagine a modern interpretation of that? Mario and Princess Peach, and after they succeed, they get a 1-up.
Hey, you very good. See you next time.
All right.
Not that kind of 1-up, no.
Anyway, so they dabbled in everything, but they were really popular in Japan with their arcade games, particularly Donkey Kong. They're a little pudgy guy who was originally a carpenter, and eventually they settled on the name Mario, but it was retroactive. That was a popular arcade game. They brought it home to their Famicom system, and then they wanted to make their Nintendo Famicom something palatable to the United States audience after the crash of the video game market in the late 70s, early 80s. And the fact that this thing brought it back to the point now where sales in modern consoles have eclipsed this and its successors combined almost, I would guess. I don't know. The PlayStation sells games well into the excess of what the Nintendo or Super Nintendo or Genesis ever sold, so I would assume Microsoft's Xbox does something similar. The president of Nintendo said, let's start in New York. That's going to be the toughest market. So they contacted toy companies in New York to see if they would sell it there. They did try to license with Atari at one point. I don't know why, given what Atari did to the market, but they did try to get Atari to license their system and bring it over, so they didn't have to. But once that failed, and they tried another one too. I don't remember the company that made Teddy Ruxpin, but they were actually trying to get a deal where if a store sold Teddy Ruxpin, it had to sell the NES as well.
Teddy Ruxpin, I haven't heard that name in years.
They actually re-released it and now has digital eyes.
Teddy Ruxpin.
Yep. And
the
it's
little tinny cuddly stuffed animal bear Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah, they used to use a tape. Now it uses some form of digital media.
Wow, we've come a long way with teddy bears, haven't we?
Oh yeah.
And speaking of coming a long way, that was quite a bit of history you just heard for the Nintendo.
And I didn't even get to the point yet where I was talking about why it's revolutionary, how they had to modify this thing from the Famicom cousin to bring it into the U.S.
And surprisingly, everything he just said was not that. But we want to take a pause from the revolutionary Nintendo and talk about the Dreamcast. Now, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have the specs and inside gut details as Mr. Prime does, but I will tell you as a fan that the Dreamcast was one of the best systems. To me, definitely ahead of its time. It had great games like Crazy Taxi, Power Stone 1, Power Stone 2, Shamanusuke, which is actually, I think, finished being in development now, crowdfunding. Shamanusuke 3 will be out. Looking forward to that game. Can't wait to get it. And also... And also, when this video is over, I will be schooling Mr. Prime on some of the video games he has missed out on, especially some here. But I definitely gotta say, for me, the Dreamcast was, to me, in my lifespan, a revolutionary video game. But like I said, definitely ahead of its time. And unfortunately, the lifespan was not that long as we wanted it to be. I think,
About 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, it came out in 99, 99. It was they pulled the plug somewhere in 2001.
So we're going to talk about some of our favorite games here. Now, I have a lot out on the original NES and Castlevania Symphony of the Night because it's my all-time favorite game.
So you can see the game.
Quick note about this. I bought this used years ago for about $25. I sold it for about $60 after I got the digital download for the PS3 and the PSP. You buy one, you get them both. I figured, this is stupid. I don't need to have this anymore. How much value could this game hold?
A lot.
It holds a lot of value. I ended up buying it again because I wanted it to be part of my collection. It's an awesome game. By far, my favorite game. Anyway, let's move along here. I've got all the Castlevanias. Castlevania 1, Castlevania 2, Castlevania 3, still mint in the box. And then I had Mega Man 2 originally in the box, but I sold it and bought it again when I was a teenager. Contra, same deal. I never actually owned that one new. And Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. These are some of my favorite games on this thing. And I, of course, cannot forget the original Super Mario Brothers, which I had out here a minute ago, and now I can't remember where I put it. So, oh, it's right here. So, mine has the Duck Hunt in it, too, which, of course, you can't play on a modern TV because the refresh rate, by the time you get the little white box, your duck's already moved. Anyway, go ahead, bud. What's yours?
Well, I gotta say, it's quite a collection Mr. Prime has there. I have a little collection here myself. I have Sonic Adventure, which, if y'all played, it was good back then, but right now, piss poor. I also have, let me see what we got. Power Stone, definitely one of the best games Capcom has ever put out. Power Stone 1 and 2, definitely my favorites. Don't have Part 2. Probably will see it in the next video. Also have Crazy Taxi. Now, with Crazy Taxi, let's face it, guys. Who wouldn't want to drive a taxi crazy in the streets? Hoping you don't hit nobody. I mean, it wasn't Grand Theft Auto at the time, but it was pretty popular and pretty fun.
And who can go wrong with the Offspring music?
Exactly. Great. I mean, come on. Anytime you start anything with you know you're going to have a good time.
Except the PlayStation 3 remaster.
They
took it all out.
That pretty much sucks. Just don't.
I have it.
Don't get
the PSP version also, which is Fair Wars. It includes Crazy Taxi 1 and 2. They also changed the soundtrack in that one.
You have that.
I do have.
Why
that.
would you have that monstrosity in your house?
Because at the time my Dreamcast wasn't hooked up.
Okay, that's a relevant
and
argument.
It was relatively cheap. I was a Prime, the PlayStation Plus member.
Prime.
Yeah, I was thinking of Amazon, but yeah, PlayStation Prime or PlayStation Plus. That one, I was a member. It was pretty cheap, so I figured why not.
Yep, you know we have to talk about that for another time. Let's get back to the Dreamcast.
Fine.
We also have Hydro Thunder. Have I played Hydro Thunder before? No, but I'm pretty sure it was good.
It was.
Yes. I'm gonna put these two games up. Now I've gotta say I love fighting games. Virtual Fighter. What was this? This was third.
3TB.
Wait, you said
Tournament something. I don't remember what it stands for.
Virtual Fighter 3. I'm gonna say Virtual Fighter 3. That was pretty good. Didn't play it too much, but there was a little bit of time I did play when it was nice. Now
actually, let me jump in for a second.
Oh, go right ahead.
This is the only Virtual Fighter that has an evade button. They got rid of it pretty quick too, because everything else was blocked. This one allows you to sidestep or whatever they called it back then.
I guess no one didn't like it back then. Also, now I have to say, Soul Calibur definitely one of my favorite all-time fighting games. And also, I like the fact that the developers of Soul Calibur, Namco, actually started to bring in guest characters, because that made the fighting franchise for me much more better.
I have Link on the GameCube version.
I used to have Heihachi on the PlayStation 2 version. I wonder if anyone had the Xbox version.
Who was on the Xbox?
Spawn.
Spawn.
Yeah, Spawn's pretty cool.
I did like the movie.
He didn't have his cape, but he had that big giant axe.
Yeah.
That was alright.
So, a little trivia about Soul Calibur. This is actually better than the arcade version.
Much better.
They completely redesigned it and then produced the arcade version, or the Dreamcast version for the arcade.
Also, very important note about Soul Calibur, I can beat him in it.
I don't know, I've never played you in it.
That means I can beat him in it.
I haven't played it in years. Killick's my guy.
Once again, oh, really?
Yeah. Ah, she's on the other foot now.
I may have a little, no, Siegfried. I go with Siegfried. I may have a hard time with that.
He's slow.
Oh, but he's powerful, bro. He is
Yeah.
powerful, man. And I have to say, I'm definitely looking forward to the next Soul Calibur. Is Soul Calibur 6 coming out?
I wonder if they're going to change the name, like they went from Soul Blade to Soul Calibur. I do have the original Soul Blade.
No, it was Soul Edge.
That was in Japan.
Oh.
Soul Blade was in the U.S. And I don't know about the PAL regions. I never checked. I never really cared.
Yeah.
But it's interesting they changed the name, rebooted the entire series. If I remember right, you're kind of floaty in the PlayStation game.
Kind of wonder, was it really necessary to really do all that, to repackage the whole series? I mean, it was fine the way it was starting off.
That is so much better.
Yeah.
That is so much better. I used to have Dead or Alive 1 on the PlayStation.
I like Dead or Alive. I have 5. Not last round. Don't get that one.
I have
Dead or
both
Alive
of them.
5. You really do?
Yeah, I have 5 on the PS3 and last round on the PS4.
Speaking of that, are you looking forward to the next Dead or Alive?
I didn't even know they were coming out with one.
That shows you just how much he pays attention to the game in
I'm
ladies
a
and gentlemen.
retro gamer, not a modern gamer.
You know what? I'm glad we had this discussion because as your friend, it is my job to help you get with the times in video games.
I don't want to get with the times. I want to play with my retro games.
But your
That's why I got this thing right here. This thing's awesome.
But your retro games are making a comeback to be important on the new systems.
Yeah, and also, I never explained how they got this thing in the stores, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that for a minute. They got this thing in the store by completely redesigning it. They used a gimmick. They made it look like a VCR, which most people had back then, and they already had a different style controller. This controller is awesome back in its day, and I'll do a video on how to clean these and make sure they still work. My Nintendo works really well with Player 1. You add a second player, for some reason it just starts pausing. I have no idea why, and I haven't taken it apart beyond the fact cleaning the contacts to see what happens. Games do start up the first time, though, on this. Almost all of them. Maybe 99% of the time. They made it look like a VCR. They didn't call it a video game console. They called it a control deck. They included a robot called Rob, the robotic operated buddy. And it wasn't on the market too long. It was expensive. It didn't really work. It broke a lot, and it was a glorified second player because the 2 or 3 games that actually used it, all it does is drop things onto the controller buttons, and well, you don't really need a robot for that. But the Rob still goes for a pretty penny today, even if they don't work, because they're nice statues.
And how many years ago did this thing come out?
The NES was released in this country, I think, in 85, 86.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a great discussion. We want to thank you for joining us at General Gamer.
Generational Gamer.
What did he say? I am P3D, and this is...
I'm going to go by the Generational Gamer.
Generational Gamer is fantastic.
Yeah, there we go. But we can call him Prime, too, son. If you like what you see, please hit like and subscribe and share it with your friends.
And don't forget to share your comments down there. We will love to read them and see what you thought.
We will reply. Thank you.
Still up. Bye.